The surgical strike is a bit of a overstatement. This is cross-border action. I don't think lessons are taught by this exaggerated surgical strike.
Hello and welcome to Bibliophile, the place to come for books, authors, the publishing news, anything to do with the literary world. Today we have this very special book, Undaunted, written by Mr. P. Chidambaram, a senior Congress leader and veteran politician who's been the Home Minister, Finance Minister, as everybody knows. You know, this government came to power on the promise of good governance. You know, that was one of their main promises. Surprisingly, in the book you spent the longest, at least the article that you've selected, is about actually bad governance.
So actually, in a light-hearted vein, they promised minimum government, maximum governance. I think they have fulfilled the first half of the promise. It's minimum government. Only the PMO is the government today. You can't go below that minimum. Everybody else is irrelevant. Every institution is irrelevant. And as a result, they make grave mistakes. Demonetization was a grave mistake. The rollout of the GST was completely flawed, and it destroyed, between them, demonetization and the flawed GST, destroyed the small and medium enterprises. Micro enterprises are practically dead now. And then they promised jobs. Where are the jobs? They promised 15 lakhs in every bank account. Where is that money? They promised to bring back the black money. Where have they brought it out? They promised fair prices for farmers. But the farmers' distress has been most acute in the last 4.5 years. Overall, every front there is deterioration. Kashmir, there is deterioration. In education, there is deterioration. You saw the ASER report. Healthcare, there is deterioration. But I think they started with great opportunity. I'm afraid they've wasted the opportunity.
You pointed out Kashmir, and as we know, there has been this terror attack recently in Pulwama. How should India react really? I mean, how would you have handled it if you were the Home Minister?
You see, it's widely accepted now. There was remarkable improvement in Kashmir since, say, 2010, going into 2015, after Mr. Modi came to power. The approach then was firm approach on the border, but a soft approach in the hinterland. I think that is the correct approach. 2015, for whatever reason, they adopted a muscular, militaristic approach. And they divided Jammu and the Valley. Today, Jammu and the Valley are so far apart, I shudder to think what will happen in the future. Be that as it may. I condemn the Pulwama incident. 44 lives are precious lives. These are young men in the prime of their age, leaving small families, young children, young wives. But the alleged perpetrator is an Indian, a Kashmiri. He is not a Pakistani. He claims to have been influenced or indoctrinated by the Jaish-e-Mohammed. Maybe that's true. But if young men are pushed into the arms of militants or militant organizations, whatever we do on the border, whatever we do to contain Pakistan, whatever we do to stop infiltration, whatever we do in terms of cross-border action, is not going to yield any results. We have to win the hearts and minds of the people of the Kashmir Valley. There, this government continued the earlier policy and did well for about a year, and I was very happy. But I'm afraid the U-turn that they did and going back to a militaristic, muscular policy is, I think, a grave mistake.
Sir, every time an incident like this happens, as you are saying, the clamor for this to be even more muscular, to even more strong, it seems to be only getting louder. And there is the demand for a strong leader at this point. So, at this juncture, is it possible to really sort of cool down temperatures?
It is. Strong leaders are not going to cool down temperatures. In fact, what we need is wise leaders, compassionate leaders. I think we should be strong, a strong military presence, strong military action on the border. Stop infiltration, stop terrorism on the border, prevent militants from coming into India. That I think should be absolutely firm, which is why we built the fence in many parts. But within the valley, you'll have to win the hearts and minds of people. The kind of reaction in rest of the country is only alienating the Kashmir people. If you take action against, or if you retaliate against Kashmir students in the rest of India, what kind of a message does it send to the people in the Kashmir Valley? Well, Indians don't want us. I think that's wrong. I think we should go back to winning the hearts and minds of the people in the Kashmir Valley. At the same time, we must take a very strong position on the border.
So even something like, say, a surgical strike at the border or beyond, you're okay with that? I mean, that is acceptable?
See, the surgical strike is a bit of a overstatement. This is cross-border action. Such cross-border action was taken in Mr. Vajpayee's time in 2002. It was taken in the UPA period more than once. But this government tends to exaggerate its actions. It said surgical strike, the first ever of its kind. We have taught Pakistan a lesson. Have we taught Pakistan a lesson? Pathankot, Uri, and now Pulwama. I don't think lessons are taught by this exaggerated surgical strike. As I said, we must have a two-pronged approach. One, a firm, strong military approach to Pakistan and on the border. The other, a more humane, kind, conciliatory, dialogue-based approach in the valley.
The attack also comes very close to the general elections which are around the corner. How do you think it might impact the elections?
Well, I hope it will have no impact on the elections because the country is united in condemning the Pulwama attack. There are no divisions among the political parties. The Congress president has clearly said that the nation stands united to condemn the Pulwama attack. So I don't think anyone can or anyone should try to gain an electoral advantage from what is happening today. But the BJP will try. But our response will be, your approach to the Kashmir problem is part of the problem. It's not finding a solution.
Sir, and talking of elections, there is this talk of this grand alliance of oppositions coming together. It's a kind of a motley group of various parties.
I object to the word motley.
Okay, let's say varied groups of regional parties. Is there anything, is there a sort of a holding idea? Is there any a glue which, ideological or economic? What is it that will hold them together?
There is. Each regional party is a fact of life. Don't underestimate regional parties. Sure. Yeah. Nor should we belittle the contribution of regional parties. Have not regional parties like the DMK, ADMK contributed to this country?
Talking of alliances that Congress has formed in various cities, this is what I was actually trying to ask. Like, for instance, in Kerala, you'll be fighting the left. Yeah. Whereas in West Bengal, you might be with them. So these kind of, is there a little confusion that...
There is none. There is none. In fact, Mamata Banerjee has the correct formulation. We may fight each other at the state level, but we are united at the national level. I don't know what the shape of an alliance will be in Bengal. I don't think the last word has been said. True. What we are trying to do is fight state elections in the context in which we find that state. But as far as the national election is concerned, I think practically all the parties except the Akali Dal and the Shiv Sena are united that we should fight the BJP.
And you would have a minimum common program. I mean, you would have a common manifesto.
Well, I don't know. I'm only in charge of the Congress Party's manifesto. My group and I are working on the manifesto. Whether the manifestos of different parties will be shared and we will evolve a common minimum program, I don't know, but perhaps that's the thinking.
I see. The other question I had was about the opposition in general and the Congress in particular. Have you been able to pinpoint corruption in this Rafale deal?
Well, corruption is an inference, is a deduction. The facts are there. The facts point in one direction. Now, why are those facts there if it was not an opaque deal, if it was not a deal shrouded in mystery? Why are these facts coming out one by one? The fact is that the Prime Minister's office called the shots. The fact is that the INT, Indian Negotiating Team, was virtually overruled on crucial matters. Waivers were galore. Sovereign guarantee, bank guarantee, escrow account were all waived. The 3 anti-corruption clauses were dropped. There's no integrity pact. And they ditch HAL for no reason whatsoever. When there was a work share agreement between HAL and Dassault, you ditch HAL at the last moment and choose an offset partner in a private sector company. Now, the combination of these facts points in one direction. Now, whether there was actual passage of money, I can't say. I mean, I don't say anything on which I don't have facts. But the circumstances raise grave doubts, and only a joint parliamentary committee looking into the matter can set at rest these doubts.
But the question is to make it an election issue, to really sort of take it down to the common man. Like a figure like this 1.73 lakh crore in the coal scam, that caught people's imagination.
Did that 1.74 lakhs crore, there's no basis at all. There's no basis for that number. Who has been prosecuted for 1.74 lakh crore? So I think these are election exaggerations. What I'm saying is a fact. India is buying 36 aircraft for 60,000 crore. I have shown my calculation that Dassault is making a windfall. Earlier, the 60,000 crore and the 60,000 crores the price, the 1.3 billion euro would have been amortized over 126 aircraft. Now it's being amortized over 36 aircraft, and the price per aircraft has indeed gone up. Dassault is making a windfall. Now what I ask myself is, what I ask you and others is, if Dassault is being given this benefit, a windfall in amortization, a windfall in price, a windfall in waiver of several clauses, a windfall in removal of anti-corruption clauses, a windfall in the choice of the offset partner. If all this gain is going to Dassault, you think that these gains will be given to Dassault for no return at all? Why should the government of India give all these benefits to Dassault? Forget anyone in India. Suddenly, why this great love for Dassault? So obviously, Dassault is being given all this. There must be some reason. We don't know the reason yet, but it raises the flag of suspicion.
So moving on, in fact, the subhead of the book is Saving the Idea of India. And as I've noticed, there is a lot on the social side that you've written, apart from governance and economy. What is this idea of India you think is under threat?
See, if you reflect, you will be able to articulate the idea of India. But even if you are not able to articulate the idea of India, you know in your heart what this India is. This is a multicultural society. This is the strength of India. This is the pride of India, that we are multicultural. We are home to many religions, many languages, many communities, many people following different traditions, different practices, different food habits, etc. In the last 5 years, this trend has gained strength. So much so that we have vigilante groups, lynch mobs, which are ruling the roost. There is a culture of impunity in India. People think they can get away with it. Anti-Romeo squads, pouncing upon inter-caste couples, interfaith couples, pouncing upon a young boy and a young girl taking a walk in the park or going to a movie, telling people you can't eat this, telling people you can't wear these clothes. This culture of impunity is what is worrying me. If the law were to prevent an excess like this, that's a different matter, but the law seems to be helpless while this growing impunity is threatening to envelop the whole country.
Sir, aren't other parties also a bit guilty of this? Like, for instance, you mentioned lynching in the cow people suspecting of cow slaughter. You know, when Congress comes to power, the first thing in Rajasthan, say in Madhya Pradesh, you know, the talk is of opening more gaushalas. In Madhya Pradesh, in fact, I think the National Security Act was slapped on 3 people on suspicion of, you know, cow slaughter. So, isn't the Congress also in some ways falling into this trap?
No, they are mixing up two things. Lynching a person for alleged cow smuggling is one thing, opening gaushalas is another thing.
Sure.
If you cannot slaughter cows, the cows will roam around the countryside, eating all the crops and all the plants. Therefore, the cows either have to be slaughtered, but if you are not willing to slaughter the cow, which has stopped yielding milk, you have to protect it somewhere and feed it. So opening gaushalas is not a crime.
But slapping
I'm coming to that. So the other issue is NSA. Now, I was the first to say slapping NSA was a mistake.
Right.
Now, I've gathered more facts. Now, apparently, it is at the district level officers took this action. And the government has now moved in Madhya Pradesh to centralize the power in the Home Secretary. So these cases cannot be slapped on individuals without the Home Secretary's okay. And now the Home Secretary is reviewing these 2 cases, whether the circumstances under which the SP, the district level officer, slapped NSA on alleged cow smugglers was right or wrong, is now being reviewed by the Home Secretary. And I'm pretty confident that they will lift the NSA. Once NSA has been slapped, you have to now withdraw it in a manner known to law. But I think if the powers are now vested in the Home Secretary, it's very unlikely that future cases will arise.
On the economy, you know, what exactly is it? Are we growing at 7.2%?
We are not. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
You see, 7% is, as I said, a deduction from facts. It is not a fact. It is not written anywhere, you are growing at 7%. Deduct 7% is a calculation you make.
Right.
But there are facts. There are no jobs as a fact. Credit growth to micro and small industries is negative is a fact. Foreign portfolio investors are pulling out money is a fact. Investments are at a historic low is a fact. Unemployment is at a 45-year high at 6.1% is a fact. If these facts are there, there's no investment, no credit growth, no jobs, and acute distress in the farm sector. These are facts. I want to ask you, how can there be a 7% growth? Exports are flat. Exports have not crossed the $315 billion that we achieved in 2013-14. Now, these are facts, and all the facts are pointing in one direction. How can growth alone be pointing in another direction? So you're mixing up facts and 7%. 7% is not a fact.
Yeah, that's true.
7% is a deduction.
So you think that the figure is sort of manipulated?
Absolutely. I think the figure is fudged. I'm not saying this. Several other people have said it. Ruchir Sharma has said, we are becoming the laughing stock of the world. Nobody believes our data anymore. Why is this Niti Aayog interfering with CSO data? Why is the Niti Aayog sitting over NSSO data? The CSO and NSSO are independent bodies under the National Statistics Commission. But because of Niti Aayog's interference, the two last members of the National Statistics Commission have resigned. You don't have a National Statistics Commission today. What will the world think? A country does not have even a Statistics Commission. And you want to believe your numbers? I don't believe these numbers, I'm sorry.
Sir, in the coming elections, do you think more than, Pulwama or Gaurakshaks or even Ram Mandir for that matter, it is these that you've just listed, do you think that would play a major role?
Economy is going to play the major role. Number one will be jobs. Number two will be the destruction of the economy by demonetization and the flawed GST. Number three will be, or you can arrange it in whatever manner, one of the three will be acute farmer distress. Acute. Prices have crashed. You don't have prices for paddy, you don't have prices for onions, you don't have prices for chili. You and I are consumers, we are happy, but what about the producer? Yeah. The producer is losing money, he is producing, and you and I are happy. I mean, how can this situation continue? I think the economy will be number one issue, and the people will eventually vote for someone who knows to manage the economy. I charge this government with complete incompetence in managing the economy.
If I know you're not into crystal gazing, but how do you think the elections are going to pan out? What will be like?
Every party goes into an election with the hope it will win it. The Congress and the BJP are in direct contest in about 7 or 8 states. We were at our nadir last time, and we can only go up. The BJP is bound to lose seats, and the seats that the BJP loses, the Congress will gain, because we are in direct contest. In the other states where there are alliances challenging the BJP, I think some of these alliances will do very well. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, yes, the alliance will do well. BSP, SP will do well. Bihar, the alliances will do very well. And I think the BJP will lose some seats there and the alliances will gain. In the states where we're in a direct contest, the BJP will lose and the Congress will gain. Final number, how it will play out, I can't say. It is in the hands of the people. But I don't think even the BJP hopes to get back its 282.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chidambaram, for talking to Biblio. Thank you very much.